So we just do like a little thought thing while people roll in. Yeah, nice having that seat set up. Your biggest thing is to make sure your questions. Yeah. Three, two, and one.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Fishing the DMV. I'm your host, Thomas Ahrens.
Jared Mounts.
So we are here at the, 4-state river panel seminar shindig.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah,
a lot of good information in here right now.
Absolutely. And for everyone, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. We wanted to put something on that was just kind of in between this lull between Thanksgiving and Christmas time for all the people that just want to get away from their families and actually talk about the things that matter, such as fishing and hunting. And we have a great lineup here for you today. Did you want to kind of tell everyone that's watching who we got?
Yeah, we got 3 river guides, and I'm going to say that these 3 guys fish by far more than anybody in this room. I know we got a lot of river rats in here that fish a lot, but you combine the number of hours and days these guys are on the river, it's going to be astronomical. We've got 3 different guides. We've got Chris Gorsuch with Real River Adventures out of Susquehanna River. We got Jeff Green with Shallow Water Fishing Adventures, mainly on the Upper Potomac, and then Travis Edens with Kingfisher Guide Service, guiding on the Shenandoah River. So it's going to be a good seminar opportunity for our live guests to ask questions and also online guests to ask questions.
100%. And then a link in the episode description is to all 3 guide services, their websites, Instagram, Facebook, everything is there. So if you would like to book a trip with them, please feel free to go through there and you could go that way. I will be monitoring the comment section down below. So if you have a question you'd like to ask them, ask away. And then we're going to be getting going here in a minute, right? All right, good deal.
All right. Oh, yeah. Again, sign up on a white ticket for door prizes. We'll get those at the end. 50-50 tickets will benefit the Frederick County Bass. I know we got 2 guys from here stand up, Clark and Christian, fishing for the Frederick County Bass. You can follow them. We got a website and on Facebook. Rick boat captains for us as well. John Kelly boat captains. They're going to be at the Susquehanna River in March. We had 2 guys go to nationals last year from Frederick County. It's the last 2 years we've had guys qualify, which says something too. Coming out of little Frederick County here, and we're competing against guys down in the south on their bodies of water, their home waters, and so we're real proud of those guys. So half those proceeds are going to go to them. Cade Bailey, is he in the room here? He's out there. When you leave, if you like fly fishing, not just fly fishing, you look on Cade Bailey dead drift fishing. He's in here. Time flies. He's catching big smallmouth. I know we all like the smallmouth on his flies that he's tying, hand tying. We're going to carry those here at Jake's. If you get a chance, you can also do custom. Daniel Charles, stand up, please. Bent rod fishing. I'm just going to announce a couple of custom guys that you're not going to see at a Bass Pro or other places. He's painting, making hard lures, soft plastics. He's painting them up. Really good product. We're carrying those in there. If you get a chance and see him as well. He's also got an online store. Chris Tedrick right here in the back. He's doing CT custom spinnerbaits for us now. They've got a little tree in here. Guys, they catch fish. I can promise you, I took them down the chick and I sent them pictures, 4 or 5 pounders. Love them. They're very similar to a War Eagle look. but he's doing a custom deal on that. If you get with him, he may be able to do custom colors. I know he's got some for Ray, which Ray's not here. Ray doesn't know it. He bought 4, but Ray's only getting 2. I'm taking 2. So I got money for that here later. So we have our live audience. We also have a digital. Three guys here for coming. I don't know if we've ever had, I know we've never had 3 river guides from 3 different waters in a room at the same time. We've done seminars before, kind of just one at a time, but we've never had all 3 together in one room. So I'm pretty excited about this. You're going to have an opportunity to ask questions. Your questions can be specific to the specific body of water, and I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves here in a minute. Or it can be, specific to the guide. Or it might just be a general smallmouth question that all 3 will answer. Okay, they're going to pass the mic back and forth. We'll field your questions. We'll field the online questions. So we're pretty excited about this. I'm going to ask that when you all ask the question, when the guide starts to answer the first guide, go ahead and repeat the question, if you will, on the mic, and then go ahead and answer it, and then pass that around. And we'll introduce Bo. Where's Bo? Stand up, Bo. Bo's with the Potomac River Bassmaster, okay, and he's also doing a raffle, okay, so we really like supporting those youth anglers. We want to keep this fishing tradition going beyond our generation. We know how much we love it. We want to pass that on to the younger ones. So we're going to go and get started. We're going to go down the line here. I want you to introduce yourself and what body of water you're fishing predominantly, or all the waters you're fishing, and maybe the boat that you're fishing out of. Once we finish introductions, we'll start taking your questions. Thank you, guys. Is it on? Yep, should be on. Check it. Check.
All right. My name is Jeff Green. I own and operate Shallow Water Fishing Adventures. I guide on the Upper Potomac River and the Susquehanna River. I also own and operate SWFA Baits, which is an online tackle shop. I operate the guide service with a Sea Arc jet boat. It's a 60-40, and it's about 17 feet long. So that's my story.
My name is Travis Edens, and I'm the owner and operator of Kingfisher Guide Services. I float and fish mostly the Shenandoah and the Upper Potomac, especially around Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And I use a 14-foot whitewater raft that's decked out with a frame that I row. So it's a little different from these guys to get around on the river and stuff, but it does the job.
Hi, I'm Chris Gorsuch. I own and operate Real River Ventures, and 99% of my fishing is the Juniata, the Susquehanna main stem near Harrisburg, and the North Branch up pretty close to the New York border. So, and we run, because it's full time, I have 2 20-foot jet boats. So if one's not working, then I can go back home and put that on the stable. It's one of those things I've learned over 16 years. You almost have to have a backup. So that's where we are. I'm very happy to be here.
All right, questions? Who wants to start? You got questions.
Chris, Susquehanna this time of year, we fished it in the summer and all, and we read a lot about the cold water fishing, but just for, you want to get out there, you just want to try to put some fish in a boat, what would be like your top 3 lures that you would just say that if you could have nothing else with you that day, what would you go with just to start out with, and then say that didn't work, how would you progressively go through that?
Okay, it's a great question. The question was, you're heading out into the Susquehanna, and I'm going to say wintertime fishing, right? Even though
Correct.
technically right now we're not in winter yet. It certainly feels like it, right? My 3 lures, you have to have some kind of a jig that you're really familiar with, right? You have to have confidence. So your favorite jig, and I'm going to say a tube would be my number 1 thing that I go with. I have a lot of confidence in it. It looks like a lot of the crayfish. I'll be honest with you, it's called a number of different things, but if you have a green pumpkin with black and purple fleck on it, it's going to be, pretty much the go-to. You're going to vary. That lure works in every color, but if it's really clear, it's not too dark to work, and it matches everything that's on the bottom. You'll hear me in my things. I was never really a big fan of these Chili Willies, just because it looks so much like an Erie darter that I used when I was a kid, and trying to progress and become, if you can use the word, more sexy with my lures.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to use that silly lure, right? So, but I can tell you, and those who have been in this room who fish with me in cold water, it's just one of those baits you have to have. I have a great confidence in it. I prefer the laminate colors. So, if it's really dark, bumblebee. If it's a little bit, stained, I like the black and tan. And then you can go on. They have a whole bunch, like a blue belly one that I don't even know what they call it anymore. I should know better. But that's one of those. And they have special hooks for them, but on a Ned rig, that's just dynamite. And right now, if you're going to be looking to find fish, I really think a jerkbait's your number one bet. And I don't, to me, it varies day to day. It really does. As long as it suspends successfully at whatever level it's supposed to, and you kind of know where you're throwing to. So one day I'll be throwing mega bass, the next day Lucky Craft. I don't mind the X-Wraps, but I tend to go smaller the colder the water gets.
I was going to ask about size-wise when you're starting it. What would you start with your initial size, and then do you go up, down, or as a general rule?
So what about size for jerkbaits? So I like to throw a big jerkbait. I like 115s, 117s, 112s, 110s. But I nearly got my butt handed to me on Tuesday, or I guess it was Wednesday this week, throwing a bigger bait. And I was confident the fish were there. I couldn't tell if I was getting ticked or bumped by fish because of the wind, but something didn't feel right. And I switched up to a smaller version in the exact same color and went 6 fish in a row. So it's knowing when to go to that. And this temperature was 42 degrees a week ago. It's 36 now, and this was 36 on Wednesday when I was out, and I should have known better. But mistakes are made.
Hey Chris, following up on those questions, when the water really clear, jerkbait you still throw a jerkbait?
Yes. So the question is, what do we do when the water is gin clear?
Gin clear.
Yeah. So gin clear is the toughest situation you're going to run into. I don't move the bait a lot. My jerks are really, they're just twitches, and it's very, very slow. And I prefer translucent color baits. So less bright, something you can almost see through, more muted colors. I know Floyd's a big fan. I can tell Floyd's sort of secret here. Floyd loves matte colored baits, so, or at least he did. I don't know if he still does, but he's a big matte bait fan. Do you have anything you want to add to that as far as color?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
So.
Oh yeah.
So the question was about the jerk baits. The ones that I like to use is what he just mentioned, the Lucky Craft ones, the Mega Bass. I use that. Was it the 110 Junior? Mm-hmm. I like that one. And the Lucky Craft, I like 3 different sizes. The 100, the 78, and then like he's talking about when it gets real cold, that's 65. And, you want it to just hover right over top of those rocks.
Same thing for all of you, because I'm sure you all got vast knowledge. That same time of year, we're talking winter, you start out, are you trying to find current? Are you trying to find still less moving water? Are you trying to find a break between faster moving water and still, just like I said, this is in general. I know everything, conditions change, but you're out there, your first time at it, your best chance to take a stab and getting onto some fish. That, 1 or 2 would be great, just so you put a couple in the boat. What would you do as a rule of thumb, like you're seeing it, and it's just the river's not raging, it's not super low, just call it normal conditions. What would you start out as depth-wise, current-wise? What type of water would you go to first that time of year, cold water?
In cold water, like right now?
Cold
November,
water, right? Yeah,
December?
November, December, moving into the when you get in there. Yeah,
And then you're talking about like
what are we talking? 40 degrees. 40 degrees.
40 degrees?
40 degree water.
It depends on how high the water is. The fish operate completely on water level, 100%. And and then your clarity. But like, for instance, on the Upper Potomac River right now, if there's areas of the river that are flowing real slow and it's super clear, they're in the middle of the river. They're under rocks.
Right.
And they have to be actually out from under these rocks to even see your bait. But when they are, you're fishing in current. I mean, I've caught fish recently in 39 degrees and the water's moving real slow. And I'm using, I was using pointer 78s.
And you just slow jerk. You're just
Yeah,
pulling
just-
that along slight, like Chris, just twitch.
Like he mentioned, yeah. Just a slow twitch. And then you twitch it one time and just let it float.
So you let it pause, you twitch it, then let it drift a couple of feet or so.
I'm talking like 15, 30 seconds. Just let it sit there and just drift. And it
So let the
just
current
does
do the
this in the
work for you
current.
at that point when it's just.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you'll feel a tap, usually.
So they're just seeing it as it's drifting within that current,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to add any extra to it. Just let
No.
don't overwork the bait. Let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Don't overwork the bait.
Yeah.
They eat it on the pause.
Really.
Yeah. But the current, you would think that they'd go into an eddy somewhere
Well,
and hold up in 40-degree water.
Right. You think they get
But
to
they
the
won't.
side and it'll be like, ooh, it's warmer over here, but
It
not
depends on the
necessarily.
water level. Yeah. Well, you can go into a section of the river that's shaded when it's cold, and they're in there, but they're not over on the other side of the river where it's warm, where the
Right,
sun's
where
in.
the sun's shining. Sometimes you think that would draw you, and your
Yeah.
thinking would be like, well, they'd be in that warmer water.
Yeah.
Huh.
But the jerkbait seems to work. But like he said, the tube, you can't beat a tube even in those conditions. Those conditions that you mentioned, the low, clear,
Uh-huh.
cold, those are tough conditions.
The tube, the same thing. You're crawling it and just letting it drift with the current. Will you have enough weight of the tube? Would it sit still, or do you want the current actually pushing it
You want
along?
You want it to sit still.
So the weight of the
Yeah.
bait, when it's on when you cast that out, you let the weight of the bait get you to the bottom. You don't want the current to move it. You want it to
No,
sit there.
yeah, you want-
Then
you
you're
want-
moving it
Yep.
the amount you want to move.
Yeah.
And you're reacting more where the jerk bait, it's more the bait's action, the tube or whatever. You're imparting the action.
Yeah.
And let it just sit and then you just drag it
Yeah,
along
yeah.
slowly.
Just last week, I was out on the Shenandoah, and the water was low before the rain, crystal clear, and I pulled one citation fish out of a very shallow, relatively shallow spot. You can almost see the bottom, and it was on a tube. And as it gets colder with the tubes, I don't know about these guys, but I downsize. I go to a smaller tube,
Like a 2-inch.
Yeah.
So is 2-inch a good, say when you're saying small, is a 2-inch, you go smaller than that sometimes? Or is a 2 is about,
2 to 2 3/4,
right, in that range when you're.
Yeah, in that range. And just let it, like I said, let it sit again, with the, similar to fishing jerkbaits and stuff like that, you want to let it sit and marinate. It's cold water fishing, man. Those fish are,
Right.
yeah, those fish are slow to move, but they're not going to pass up.
So you're
a
gonna-
meal.
In general, again, I know we're talking general terms, more of a tick than a thump. When the fish is going to strike.
I mean, I've had it. I've had thumps. I mean,
Right. But just as a general rule, you would feel more of a subtle tick. Yes, one could get crazy on it.
So fishing every day, I can tell you there is no one answer to this. Okay, so I will tell you this: bass are in more current than you can fathom. They're in
I
a lot
would-
more current. I mean, I fished. I don't mean to just to give. I fished with 2 other guides on a video that we shot many years ago, and it was with up on the Juniata, and it was in my boat, so I got to pick the places we went. And both of the guides, after I was done, said, I would have never fished this fast of water at this time of year. And so you do have those days when you want to be in the deadest water you can find. You don't want to move the bait much. You want to be checking your line once in a while more than bouncing it.
Right.
And then it could be the exact same water temperature, 34, 35, 36. You mentioned 40. 40, you can get away with almost anything. But when you drop below 37 degrees, you really have to be a little bit more in tune. But, you have to, 2 guys fishing, you want to communicate with each other. Hey, I just felt a pickup. I wasn't moving the bait. Or hey, I noticed my line moving and then I set the hook, or that fish almost ripped the rod out of my hand, right? So you want to try it all.
Right.
And I would say start out in that dead water, but don't be afraid to throw into the current seam and let it bounce into that dead water. Because sometimes they're sitting. I mean, it takes almost as much effort for these fish to be in light current than it does to be in no current, because they can't kind of control their body, right? So unless they're laying on the bottom or laying under a rock, which they do, you'll see them. But a lot of times they like to be on that soft seam. And then one thing, I'll just add one thing really quick, is everybody likes to fish below a ledge, right? They like to cast up to it, fish below, and of course there's fish there. But a lot of times, due to the hydraulics, when the water is at these normalized levels, they'll be 4 feet in front of the ledge in that pillow of very soft water.
Close water.
And if you've ever waded, or these raft guys know, right? You can be in those areas and not hit the rock, but not go up river either, right? There's a real soft cushion in front of these underwater flows, right? So just knowing that and feeling that with your jerkbait, or feeling it with your tube, sometimes those fish are in that pillow. You hit that pillow, it's a gold mine.
Right here. Doc.
This kind of goes to all three of y'all. During the winter, what do you find as far as line that you tend to use, especially bottom fishing, whether it be braid, the fluoro leader, or fluoro, or mono? What is it?
What kind of line to use? I'm a big fan of braid, because braid it's static and not dynamic, so it doesn't stretch. With this time of the year, if it's clear water, I'll throw on a fluorocarbon leader. But me personally, we use 10-pound test.
I like to use, you said in the cold water, what kind of line?
Like winter fishing,
Yeah, I like to use fluorocarbon to a braided, to braided line. And to tell you the type of line I like to use is either a sunline. It's a certain model of sunline. It's called Sniper, but it's not. There's other Sniper, but there's this one that I really like, and they play it off like it's camo, but that's not the reason why I use it. It just happens to look like that. But that line seems to work really well, and I like to use anything between 8 and 10 pounds. Most of the time I use 8 though, and I tie it with a double uni knot, and I can just tie, what is it called, a cinch knot, instead of using a Palomar knot on this type of line. But to let you know, fluorocarbon, in my experience, you get what you pay for with fluorocarbon. If you buy cheap fluorocarbon, you're going to get cheap results. They're going to bust that line. I also use, depending on the jerk baits he was talking about earlier, I like to use monofilament because it floats. The jerk bait, also, you want to have it suspend. That's my idea. That's what I believe. And I always use, for all of these leaders, I use about a rod's length of leader line. So if you have a 7-foot rod, use roughly 7 feet of leader line. So, and then the monofilament, if you're using like a jerk bait, it stretches. It's so when that fish hits it and you pull back on it, there's a little bit of give, and you're not going to rip those treble hooks out of his mouth. But yeah, I like fluorocarbon.
I'll add a little bit to it. So for jerk baits, you're going to have your schools of old school guys who like to use mono, like me, and then you'll have the guys who want to use a sinking line because they want to get down further than what their bait is listed for, because that line's going to sink. And then you have the guys who want to use, they want to feel everything about that bait, so they're going to throw on 8, 10, or 12-pound super line, your braid, onto a longer leader. And so it all works. The biggest key is knowing where your bait is in that water column. So if you're new to it, pick one and go with it, right? So if you have a big hook set, I'm going to tell you to stay away from that super line, or go to a really soft, really slow rod, because you're going to rip the hooks out of their mouth. You just will. The key is I can make a bait go deeper or low, or by the width of the line, by the type of the line. So as long as you know where your fishing column is, because I've had days where fishing the exact same bait on 2 different lines created 2 different results. So as long as there's days when you can't get that 100 down deep enough, standard SP 100 down deep enough, without going to some kind of either fluorocarbon or going to a super line with the fluorocarbon leader. But I prefer to throw a deeper lip and be down there with my model because I tend to sit the hook really hard, right? I just can't help myself, right? And then as far as knots, one that you tie and you're comfortable with it, right? Mm-hmm. So you have direct access to most of these line manufacturers. If you're having a problem with a knot, they may tell you to use a different line when you're tying it to it. If you don't moisten the Palomar knot, it is going to break on a hook set, on fluorocarbon. It just will. Moisten. Because when it heats up, it gets weak. I use fluorocarbon because it's super abrasive resistance. I don't use it for its invisibility. It sinks well, and it's really abrasive resistance. So that in combination with super line, like a braid on a jig, I mean, you can feel that fish go by. I'm not kidding. You really can at times.
Got an online question here.
So we're going to break into some online questions here now for everyone. This first one is from, and I apologize, I'm not good at the old English, Whoop Bass for $10. He asked this question for Chris. What is the best depth for winter holes, and what bottom structure defines a wintering hole?
There you go. This is only 2 hours. For the Susquehanna, this has kind of changed some, and this is not a bash on the Flatheads, but a lot of the community holes that were once 7 to 12 foot deep around right about now are starting to really house hundreds, if not more, of the Flathead and the channel cats, more than they've ever housed before. And I can tell you from fishing the Delaware and the Hudson, where we have these shad runs and the striper runs, smallmouth don't play well with big groups of fish, even if they're not predatory. But if you fish the Delaware during the main shad run and try to catch bass, good luck to you, because they don't like thousands of fish or hundreds of fish swimming by them. They just don't. Although they're schooling fish themselves, they really don't like being in those pockets. So if you used to fish 400 in 10 foot of water with the other 10 to 20 boats and catch 70 to 80 bass, those days are gone, right? So now instead of hitting 4 or 5 spots in the winter, I'm hitting 30 or 40. And if you fish with me, I'm going to run. That's why I've got the faster boat now, because I want to be able to run to these spots. And some days it's going to be 3.5 to 5 foot behind a grass bed. And some days it's going to be 3 to 5 foot in front of or behind a rock ledge. I'm constantly looking, and they will move. I mean, it's amazing that they'll move. So you'll have bottoms of islands, sides of islands that are shaped right, rock ledges, and grass beds are really your primary piece. I think when it gets really cold, there's 4 or 5 places that always hold fish, and then you have to look for them otherwise. But my best hole, 8 years ago, you could sit and catch 40 bass out of one hole. Now, if I can get 15 out of a hole, I'm doing really well. So I prefer gravel structure, but I'm not going to argue with fish that want to be in mud. And I'm going to check them. I'll do my grass bed thing first, or my ledges first. And if I can't find them, I'm going to go to mud. I'm going to go to softer bottoms.
Good deals.
It's much shallower than it's ever been.
Want me? Anybody else who wants to? All right. And the question was about wintering holes and what was it here?
Depth.
Depth and
So on the Potomac River, I believe they like anything that's 4 feet or deeper. And then on the Potomac River, it depends on the clarity. If the water's super clear, they're not going to be sitting in those spots. They'll be out in the middle of the river if the water's low enough. But and on the Susquehanna where I guide, they tend to be, you can find them even in shallower water sometimes, but they're about the same. But I can tell you this about the smallmouth on the Potomac River. They move constantly. When I tell you they move all the time. You can hit a section of river one day and you go back to it and they're nowhere to be found. They move. They move from one section to another. And I've noticed that this year I've really noticed you'll fish in an area, and if it's almost like they're doing a big circle constantly. You won't catch them in a spot that you caught them yesterday, but if you hit it early in the morning and go back a couple hours later, there'll be 3 fish there, and it's like they just go around and around and around, and that's my experience with it, with the different depths and where they sit during cold water, situations.
Yeah, as far as what I've seen on the Shenandoah and the Upper Potomac around Harper's Ferry is that, generally what I'll focus on is deep holes to start out with, if they're there. But I also find that at low, clear water, the fish move around, and I think that they move from one hole to another. You just kind of seeing what's out there. But, as far as bottom, you start feeling chunk, big rocks and stuff like that. There's a pretty good bet you're going to get into them.
And so we got another question.
Travis, you fish pretty close to Upper Potomac and the Shenandoah by the crow flies. What's the difference between the two areas in your, that you see between the Upper Potomac, Upper Ferry, and down?
Yeah. The difference between the Upper Potomac around Harper's Ferry and the Shenandoah is that, well, for one, the Potomac is much wider than what the Shenandoah is. Plus, I find that you've got a little bit more. The Shenandoah tend to concentrate a little bit more on the banks, fishing the banks. But of course, it's like Jeff said here. I mean, water level dictates it where these fish are, and but really the big difference between the two is that the Potomac's much wider, seems to have a little bit more rock structure, solid bedrock. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Shenandoah does as well, but it seems to be a little bit more prevalent in between the two. Whereas you get down on the South Fork, you get a lot of cobble, on the South Fork. So,
We'll alternate questions. Online questions.
Yeah, we got a couple of online questions here we're gonna go to. And again, for everyone listening in right now, we're at 9 likes. If we could get that up to 15 likes, that'd be awesome. And again, if you want to ask a question online, you can go for it. Any super chat question automatically enters you in for a raffle at the end of the day, and it will also make sure that your question gets answered first. The next question we have is from Sam Idigan. Sam Idigan, I think. Sorry, bud. How does a high water event like we are seeing right now affect winter river fishing?
All right, how does a high water event like now? So the way it'll affect winter fishing is, I found, Jeff and I were talking about this early in 2018. We had tons and tons of water. So, yeah, and it was if you didn't learn to figure out where the fish were in 2018, you probably didn't find much in the way of fish. But it taught me personally, it taught me a lot about where to go. When the water comes up, it gets dirty. As far as on the Shenandoah, you find them up in a lot of the bank eddies, and we're talking, so if the Shenandoah, the Millville gauge for the Shenandoah is running at 7 feet, you just concentrate on those bank eddies a lot of times, because there is structure out in the middle of the river, and they could definitely be down on the bottom at it. But a lot of times when it's dirty, I think they move up to those bank eddies, and some of those bank eddies would be 2 feet wide, and you could pull a citation fish out of that 2 feet wide water. Tough thing is keeping your bait in there, such a small area, and not running right up on top of it. But it's definitely higher water is a challenge, and like anything, you adapt and you overcome. And on a high water day, I mean, if you come out with a handful of fish, I mean, I think you're doing good. So better than getting skunked.
So to be clear about high water, there's 2 different pieces of high water. There is the rise and the fall. So if you can be out there on the rise, don't miss that opportunity. When they're moving, if you can be out there before it crests, when they're moving to those places, even though turbidity can be a problem, but you're using that at max turbidity. And when I'm talking about turbidity is the best location might be on the bank, but it's full of garbage and debris. But in the middle of the river behind an island where the debris isn't that bad, that might be a place that you try to hit them at. So bass are just like any other living creature, right? As soon as that flow increases, as soon as the air increases for a deer, you're going to go to some place where you're protected, right? If they have protection and food, that's all the better. So they're going to move tight. So, that statement where, 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water, high water, 99% of the fish are in 10% of the water. So for me, it's a little easier to find them. Now, once that water is crested and it starts to go down, that's a whole different ball of wax there. You have to cover yourself, look for a lot of other places. And those are the days when you walk out of there with just a handful of fish, because when it's going up, they're going to go to the best spots, and you're going to find those best spots. They're going to be loaded with fish. As it goes down, they're going to drift down to those pockets and then do what Jeff said. They're going to start to do their circling pattern and move around these bigger eddies. So as that water level starts to drop, even though it's still high water, they can be really tricky to find, right? But cold water on a high water event, it pushes these fish to where it is. I'll tell you one thing too is sun is your friend only during the winter. So if you've got a sunny bank in the afternoon, I would spend most of my time on that sunny bank in the shadows. Because at this time of year, one of my favorite places to fish doesn't even get sunshine until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I kind of avoid it come February, right? But that's one of my favorite places to fish in the summer, even though it has, the sun comes on at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. If you've got those spots that are sunny and you've got turbidity in the water, the way that water will warm up so much faster than on a clear day is just amazing. So.
And I'll add to it that sometimes just a couple degrees in water temp rise can turn the bite on. So,
my experience on the Upper Potomac River and mainly the Upper Potomac River is like right now the gauge at Edwards Ferry is reading like 8.4. It's starting to crest. So that means the water at the Point of Rocks gauge, people are familiar with that, is probably around 4. They're about 2 feet apart always. Every now and then you'll come across an instance where they're not that way, and you have to be real careful depending on the water level. But my experience on the Potomac is like right now they push up on the shorelines and they push up on them real tight, and you just have to keep finding areas where there's just pools of water, and they'll sit in an eddy where it looks like the water's only like I don't know, 2 feet wide, and there's no water moving, and there could be 5 fish sitting right there. It could be a giant sitting in there with some other fish. So what else? I was thinking about something and I lost my train of thought on it.
It'll come back. Sucks to get old.
What'd you say?
Sucks to get old.
Yeah. Well, I just turned 44, so it's all downhill. But they, he was saying too, even in high water, I believe that these fish, now that these are just my beliefs, these fish, there's fish in the middle of the river, even when the water's super high. And I think they're behind rocks. They're in places where you can't even fish for them. I mean, the water's just rolling, and they tuck up under rocks, and those fish are probably uncatchable at that moment in time, but I do find that the best time to catch them in the wintertime is when the water's rising. I have found though that when the water's real high, like right now, it's just up. It's not super high, but it's tough to catch them in the wintertime when it's super high, especially if you try to use the same idea of like when it's spring, summer, or fall, where you can go up into the creeks and catch them. They don't ever tend to be in the creeks. You guys ever find that?
No, because of water volume, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to talk loud just so you guys can hear me. Water volume is a huge piece. So in the wintertime, at a 10-degree night or a 20-degree night, those smaller flows of those creeks are going to be dumping the coldest water in the river in the morning. So I know guys like to fish below a creek, but in the wintertime, that's not your best bet unless there's a warm water influence. So generally speaking, the smaller fishing the mouths of a creek on a high rise in the winter, not your cup of tea, unless you get like a 50-degree rain, then it changes it. But most of us river guys, we don't have to have the most expensive electronics, right? But if you can just tell what the water temperature is, even if it's not exact, right? Mm-hmm. So I might be reading 35.6 and Jeff might be reading 37, but we know where our baseline is, right? So if we find a spot that's 40, I'm probably going to spend more time at 40 than I am at 37 if I have the option. I just believe that it happens. And someone mentioned it out here, as the water changes, you get a 2 or 3 degree rise on a sunny day, that's going to really impact these fish. It just will. And you'll find them shallower.
Speaking of electronics, in the winter, I would imagine, would side scan be of help in some of those holes?
It can't hurt.
Do you use it?
I don't. It's one of these things where, you've got 360 and Mega Views and Live Scope and all these wonderful tools. They're all helpful, right? You still have to find active fish. Just because you find fish sitting someplace doesn't mean they're active, but it shortens the game, And if there is a time of the year to waste your time using that on the river, that would be the time, right?
Santa?
Talking about smallmouth moving, middle of the river to the bank, middle of water flow. What do you think, in your own opinion, is the average distance reach the maximum distance?
That's a great question. You mean during the wintertime?
Look at winter.
Okay, well, I think winter they move less, right? Because they have less. They have to be very conscious of how much they burn, right? So when Jeff's saying they move in a circle, back in the 400 days, you could watch people catch fish, and then 4 boats later, they're catching fish. Then down the line, you could see them swinging and doing that circle. So they're definitely moving. It depends on the size of the hole. I don't think these fish are moving 8 miles in the course of 2 days in the wintertime. I think if they'll slide up along an island, they'll slide along a ledge. I mean, if you follow their seasonal movement, which I really try to pinpoint that seasonal movement, where I'll follow the same group of fish 8 miles up the river. I love doing that because I kind of know I'm going to be on fish right from the word go. Timing this winter move is really tough. I mean, I don't think these fish locally moved into their winter patterns until this week or last week. I mean, I found fish in summer patterns, fish in fall patterns, and I think they're just now starting to gather up. Mm-hmm. Where like last year, they were gathered up already by now. Mm-hmm. So depends on the flow. If there's food and shelter, I think they don't move very much at all. If there's not, I think they move a lot.
Transitioning from winter to spring, you said you've seen them go as far as 8 miles?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they may go further. A study was done, Berkeley did a study, I think it was on the upper Mississippi, and they track fish moving 12 miles during the spring migration. I'm not saying they all do, but in my river system, the bigger the creek, the bigger the migration. So, if you look at it's too bad that dam's there, but if the West Branch and North Branch didn't have a dam in front of it, you'd see a huge migration up those rivers. Right now, the bigger the creeks, the bigger that migration is.
Thomas has an online question.
Yeah, bringing it back to online. Let's see. The next question you had was from Brandon Solis. How have the Flathead affected smallmouth in the winter?
How have the Flathead affected smallmouth in the winter?
They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, so I used to be an absolute frothing from the mouth hater when it came to talking about flatheads. Just they annoyed me. The guys who stocked them annoyed me. But my position has changed over the years. I'm still not happy about it, but it has really improved my own personal fishing game. It has. The ability to go out and find fish easily has been taken away, but you're now looking more, now trying different baits. You're now, using, you used to go out with a smoke purple tube and you could catch 50 fish without even thinking about it in these holes. Now you've really got up your game. You're going to be playing with, better lures. So something they haven't seen before. You're going to try a different technique. You're going to look in different areas. You're burning more fuel, which is probably good for the economy, but it has changed the game where a lot of these known community holes are still holding bass, but only a fraction of what they used to hold. And so these bass have found other areas, what we've talked about, where we look for them, and that's where it's changed. Do they prey on smallmouth? Absolutely. But I'm sure the smallmouth prey on the smaller ones of those as they're born. So it's a good way of maintaining the population. I know it's not popular. I think that it's going to improve our size over time because there's fewer fish to eat, even though the flatheads eat a lot themselves. I just think it has changed the location more than anything else.
Guys, for everyone watching, we're at 23.
All right, I'm gonna bring up a controversial subject. Do any of y'all utilize crankbaits in sub 40-degree weather?
I'm a little bit limited.
Grinding on the bottom.
I'm sorry.
Grinding the bottom.
Yes, it's slow as you can go.
Right.
Crankbaits.
No.
Crankbaits in the wintertime.
So I love crankbaits, and Floyd knows I love them. But Floyd schooled me on a 37-degree day. We had to be in 7 or 8 foot of water, and he just drugged that bottom. I mean, I think that he had to have a mud line behind that bait, and he was catching fish, and I just was blown away. But no, that's not my. I've seen it work. And even though I've seen it work, I'm apt to throw a jerk bait or a tube or something like that. Swim bait. But Floyd definitely schooled me on that.
Thomas?
Yeah, just an update right now. We have we've been bouncing between 50 and 35 people watching right now, which is fantastic. Again, guys, if you could get this up to 30 likes, that would be awesome. We do have an extra question here. Again, this one is from Brandon. Weirdest thing that happened to you guys on the water this year that you can talk about.
Oh, I hand it to me. It was about, 2 weeks ago. It was a nice fall evening. No, I was going up the river. It was in between White's Ferry and Dickerson, the Dickerson power plant. And I got a guy with me. I look over to on the Virginia side, and there's a dude swimming in the water. The water was like 42 degrees. At first I thought he didn't have any clothes on, but he had, I guess they were swim trunks. I mean, I look over and the guy's swimming in the water and it's 42 degrees. So that's the weirdest thing I've seen that I'm going to tell you. I've seen some other things, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of weird things that have happened to me, but I will say there was one instance this past, I guess it was late October, early November, and I did watch a guy with a new to him boat, put it on the river. Obviously had not done any figuring out how to make the motor run or anything like that, checking his, trolling motor batteries or anything like that. And he launched and, was floating down the river and was trying to start his motor and stuff. And I actually rode over with him with my customers and tried to school the guy a little bit on what he needed to do and that he needed to drop an anchor because he was about to the point of no return. So.
Oh, no, we see more. Okay, I don't think that's so I had another one. This is Montgomery County, Maryland now. At Edwards Ferry, I pull up to come, to finish the day off, and there was a couple of people that had decided on the boat ramp to set a table up on the boat ramp, and they were eating lunch on the boat ramp. I mean, who knew? I mean, they were eating lunch on the boat ramp. I don't know, man.
No, Chris? Chris doesn't want to comment.
I think the Maryland people are crazier than the Pennsylvania one here.
You talked about the fish that just will be stubborn and not be able to see your bait. Do you have a preferred? Every brand has their own stench to it. Do you have a preferred stench that you like?
Yeah, I'll say is, as far as you're talking about like
repeat the question.
Yeah. So you're looking for, the question is that a smell for the bait?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I like that dip and glow, that scented dip and glow, and I'll take a tube and take the legs of it and dip it in orange dip and glow. There's a certain time of the year that crayfish will have a little bit of at least the local crayfish will have a little bit of orange on them, and makes your boat smell like an Italian restaurant.
So hopefully Stan from Pit Lures is not watching this now. We always have this conversation because I call it a scent and he calls it a taste. And I think that what his point is that bass don't have a sensory like a salmon does or a catfish. The key to using them, and I like bass fees from Smelly Jelly, and I like the stuff that comes in a paste because it's less of a mess. But if you open it up in the summertime, you're going to kill somebody. So I only ever use mine in a whole book. But what it does is it gets that fish to hold on to it a second longer, so that because they're not crushing it and ripping it right out of your hand. Sometimes it's just a little tap, a little tick. It feels like someone's just flicking the bait like that. And what you'll feel sometimes, you actually feel them spitting it out, rejecting it, and you go to set the hook and you come up empty. So with the attractant on it, I'm going to say for flavor, I think that they hit it, and if they hit it, they'll hit it again, or they'll hold on to it a little bit longer so you can feel it. But whether you're using a Strike King product or something, I mean, some people like garlic scent. I just usually use a crawfish because I think they eat a lot of crawfish and they like it. But I'll even paste, if I'm throwing blade baits or jerk bait and it bites real slow, I'll even dip my finger in it and coat the bait so that if they hit it to see if it's real or not, and they get that whiff of it or that flavor, they'll come back and grab it. And I don't know if it works, but it gives me confidence, which makes me fish the bait longer, and I might be successful just because of confidence.
You lick your finger out? You lick your finger out?
Oh, absolutely.
This stuff tastes nasty. I use a Smelly Jelly. I use it. It's in a plastic jar. I use the orange. I guess it's a crawdad flavor, and I feel like it just gives you a little something extra. I only use it in the wintertime, like he was just talking about. They'll come up to it. I think sometimes that's the deal breaker. I think they swim up to it. They're looking at it. They're like, man, I don't know. It doesn't really look like something I want to eat, but maybe. I mean, I know they're fish, but they're just sitting there. I think it just gives them a little something extra, and they grab it, and that's when you have time to set the hook on them. Or like Chris said, they just hold on to it for that tiny bit much longer, and you fool them, and then that's how you can land a big one that way too.
Thomas?
All right, we got another question online here. It is from, we're going to call him Larry H7237. How much does the full moon affect them? I'm assuming he's talking about smallmouth.
I'll say as far as a full moon, especially in the summertime, it will affect them. Full moon they'll feed through the night on a full moon, and you come back the next morning and they're just not hungry. There's fewer of them that are hungry, so they fill their bellies through the night.
Yeah, when I started guiding full time, I stopped looking at moon phases. I stopped looking at anything that would detract me from having a negative attitude going out.
Yeah, very good.
Joe Raymond and I, and hopefully doesn't mind me telling this, we fished a morning of a supermoon, and we struggled to find fish. And this is two people who knew an area very well struggled to find fish. It's one of those days where I think on that situation, if you can select the afternoon or evening to fish, that's a better time to fish, as it comes into the evening in the summertime. I don't think it plays as much of a role in the wintertime, but in the summertime, those long days, super moon. I mean, I used to remember almost getting up in the morning and seeing the moon up in the, bright full moon up in the sky and going, I'm not going out in this day. Just not going to do it. But like I said, you can catch fish. Somewhere, somebody's catching fish. So if I go out, if I look at the tide tables, or if I'm looking at something, I just put it out of my head. I don't want to go out there and not think I'm not going to catch it. So even if I have a poor day, I'll tell my clients, somebody somewhere is catching these fish. You just picked the wrong guide that day. I just couldn't figure them out. But there is very few days, and there are days when the fish will not eat. And I find them to be very close to super.
This time of year, do you prefer a steady barometric pressure falling or rising this time of year?
This time of the year, steady or falling. So.
Yeah.
Guys.
The same thing. This is to add what Chris was saying. So when you fish a bunch and you fish every day, none of those things should change your mind about fishing. You should always have some type of positive outlook on it, because the fact is, the more you fish, the more chances you have of having a bad day fishing, if that's such a thing, right? I mean, you're going to go out there and it doesn't matter what you do. It's just not happening, And I guess it depends on the fishery. Like the Potomac River can be a lot more finicky than the Susquehanna River.
Yeah, for someone who, I'm a bank eater, I love dirty water, but I love section currently right now. I mean, it's gin clear, beautiful water. For someone who lacks confidence in, clear water, do you have any tips or suggestions for fishing in that?
Yeah.
What time of year did you say?
Preferably any, but I guess right now.
So in the wintertime, you're talking about fishing the bank in low clear water?
That's what I'm comfortable with, dirty bank water in general. But obviously, right now it's wintertime, so just clear water in general. Do you have any?
Yeah, you just have to fish slow, like they just said. I mean, you just have to keep fishing slow and just stay positive about what you're doing, because you don't want to keep moving around. You want to give these areas that you've been catching fish in a chance, because some of those areas will surprise you. And it's usually the ones that you didn't have much confidence in to begin with. I mean, but just slow down fishing and probably use a smaller bait, 2 3/4 inch tube, something like that, something under 3 inches.
And I'll add to that, to your question there. I'll do a little bit of bank fishing. If I'm on my way to the grocery store or something like that, I need to kill some time. Can't take the boat out. I'll go and beat the bank. In wintertime, this time of year, I want to look for deep, generally, and fish it slow. So, and get away from the bank. I did have usually what I'll throw is tubes, Ned rigs, things, something along those lines. And, I had an epiphany with a Ned rig one time, in the winter time, low clear water, threw it out there. My normal with the Ned rig was just to hop it every now and again across the bottom, and actually rod tip being pulled up. I watched 3 largemouth and 2 very good sized largemouth and 2 smallmouth medium sized follow the bait, and they were interested, but they weren't willing to commit, and they just watched that bait hop across and they'd follow it. And I thought to myself, all right, I'm watching this all unfold, so let's switch it up a little bit. So I dropped the rod tip, and with that Ned rig, pulled it. And when I pulled it, it made that Ned rig, it was a 2-tone Ned rig, making it spin, so it kind of flashed, and it made them eat. And so from that point on, I was like, all right, I'm going to fish the Ned rig a little bit differently. And being out with a buddy of mine fishing who's very competent angler, and I was catching fish right in behind him because he was retrieving the Ned rig differently from what I was, and they wanted what I had to offer them.
We have somebody back here that's one of that question.
Yeah, me and my buddies go up to Susquehanna and fish a lot in the springtime. We always use bed rigs, tubes. We want to expand into spinnerbaits and chatterbaits. What's your experience with them, and what color would you use, and how do you fish?
So the question is, a lot of time spent with soft plastics, a variety of soft plastics, and wants advice on whether to throw spinnerbaits and chatterbaits. Yes, you definitely want to do that. So chatterbaits, when they first came out, it was like the whopper plopper of baits, right? I mean, it seemed like every bass in the river wanted them. Nowadays, you have to throw them a little bit more, right? I think you have to throw them a bit. I would recommend finding a competent trailer. A lot of guys like to use crawl trailers. I would experiment. I like to throw like a razor shad on it. If it's dark, I'll throw dark. If it's clear, I'll throw light. I don't mind it looking like a spinnerbait. It doesn't have to look like a crayfish. It's tough to throw them as a guide, and I'll explain why. Because being a guide, you tend to throw towards the structure, so it hits right at the grass bed and you bring it back. But when you do that, you're only covering a piece of where those fish could be. So if you're in a kayak or in a boat fishing by yourself in front of the boat, you can drop down below the island alongside of it and throw that, if this is the island, alongside of it and bring it down that entire side. You're going to cover that whole stretch and catch a lot more fish than a guide can, because I have to set my boat up like this, and both guys have to kind of fight for that territory, right? And you can from the top down, usually bottom up works a little better, which is also more difficult for holding the boat control and giving everybody the good angle. The word angling, the angle makes a big difference. So yes, definitely throw them. And I don't know why, but the jackhammer, at the crazy price it is a much better bait for me than the other one. I like fishing the Pro Series. I wish it worked as well as a jackhammer, but there's just certain days when that jackhammer is the answer. So the bigger profiles generally work really well. The more grass you have on a grass bed, I kind of like it the better, right? Spinnerbaits the same way. You've got someone back here who's making his own spinnerbaits. Generally, when you have that ability to be able to play around with, whether you want Colorado or turtleback or willow blades, and whether you want two different color combinations on your skirt material, whether you put a trailer on it or don't put a trailer on it, it's experimenting. I know that for me, these smaller profile baits work better. And it can be heavy. I mean, I throw a lot of half ounce, but it's a smaller profile bait. Darker water, I'm going to throw a thumper, one big Colorado blade, and thump the snot out of that water. It moves really slow. If it's the summertime, I would rather wait till the sun is a little higher in the sky, so I get that sun allowing that bait to flash. And I'm sometimes fishing current, really, really fast current sometimes with those baits. So throw them. Here's what you got to do, whether you're going to fish either one of these things, since you're not used to it, is leave the soft plastics at home. Leave them at home so that you throw them. And you're going to find that if you don't throw the bait caster right now, because you're generally speaking, the smaller soft plastics spinning rigs work better. You're going to want to learn to find yourself a good bait caster, and because you're going to be so much more accurate. You're going to have so much more energy at the end of the day. It's not going to beat you up. And you're not going to have to retrieve it super fast to get it to move. So that's the advice. But on the Susquehanna, the Delaware, I can speak for the Lower Potomac. Spinnerbaits and chatterbaits are very good.
Thomas?
We got a couple more questions here. Sorry, just getting the audience.
Just to add to that, those spinnerbaits and those chatterbaits, I like to consider them like they're situational. You can't just always throw them. You have to have the right situation. If you don't have the right situation, they're not going to work. When I say that, like for instance, rising water, spring, summer, fall, not in the winter, but spring, summer, fall, you could probably go out there right now and catch one on the spinnerbait. I'm not saying that. I mean, maybe. But spring, summer, fall, you have rising water. You've got a lot of color to the water. That's when you throw them. If you low clear water, you have to downsize them a lot. Believe it or not, when you're talking about a spinnerbait, have you guys ever seen a beetle spin? Beetle spins catch big smallmouth in the summertime when the water's super, super low. But also, just to add to that real quick, spinnerbaits and chatterbaits, they catch big fish. I know there's other baits that do, but spinnerbaits and chatterbaits catch monster smallmouth, absolute giant smallmouth. And they're definitely worth throwing and you know, getting to know how they work and how to fish them.
That's another question for chatterbait. You pulse it when it's settled.
You can. You can throw it out, pulse it back. You know, I don't use he was talking about bait casters. I don't really use bait casters much in my guide service because most people, it's tough for them. The people I take out, they don't fish all the time. So I use spinning reels. And you want to use like a 2000 or 2500 series spinning reel. Yeah, and you just pulse them back. But you can also just retrieve them directly back to the boat. But you want to throw it structure. When I talk about situational too, like I heard him just say, you want to have something to throw at. Unless you know there's fish out there, unless you know there's big chunk rock in the middle of the river, and that's what you want to target. You just don't want to throw them like you throw plastics. You have to have something to throw at, and you'll be more successful. But you want to consider them situational. Like plastics are like 365. You can throw them all the time. But spinnerbait, chatterbait, no.
Yes, we have a couple more questions online that we're going to get to. Again, guys, if you are watching online, please just type in your question and we'll try to get to it. The next question we have is from Low Chops 301. Question from Jeff McGowan for Jeff Green. Do you feel that the profile of your baits are more important than the color of the baits you use on the Upper Potomac?
I do. I feel like profile is number one. And first and foremost, that's what you have to have. A 2 3/4 inch tube, I think, would outfish a 3-inch tube any day. Smallmouth. Those 3-inch Ned rigs, 2 3/4 inch Ned rigs, the profile means everything. So, for instance, you can go out one day and catch fish on a Ned rig, and I think they think those Ned rigs sometimes are crawdads. Why? I don't know. I mean, they don't have pinchers or anything on them, but I think they think they're crawdads, or they think they're those stone cats, those mad toms, just kind of on the bottom, just floating around a little bit, easy to eat. But you can catch them on a Ned rig one day, and you go out the next day and they won't even touch them, and they prefer that tube profile. So yes, I believe the profile's first and foremost the most important, most important thing when it comes to catching river smallmouth. Also, if you're using a spinnerbait, I guess you can consider it a profile kind of situation, but I know there's vibration involved. I've fished spinnerbaits and chatterbaits before, and one will catch fish and the other one will not. So sometimes they'll chase a chatterbait and refuse to hit a spinnerbait. And you throw, literally, I've thrown in the same hole, and they'll hit a chatterbait but won't hit the spinnerbait. And I don't know if that's the profile of the bait coming through the water, because they do have different profiles, or if it's the thumping of or the vibration. Anyone else?
All right. Weather notwithstanding, you can only pick one 10-day period in a year to fish. You got 10 days.
Late March.
Yeah, 10 days. When are you fishing?
Jeff likes late March, and the only problem with late March is you don't know what the water level is going to be.
Right.
So my new favorite time to fish is December 1st to the 10th. It is the new fall. I say what you will about the climate change. We get on debates. It just, the water temperatures and the air temperatures seem to be better the last 3 or 4 years at the end of November, early December than they were. Used to be end of October, early November, right? That was the time to go. But I think right now, if I honestly, just because you rarely have terrible storms in December, right? We just don't. But March, you get all the ice melt from New York, if you get a lot of snow, March could be phenomenal, or it could be an absolute blowout, right? So I would agree that I would prefer rising water temperatures over lowering. If you could take that, if I knew that the conditions were the same, March definitely gets my vote. But I'm really become a fan of this December fishing.
Early December.
Yeah, I would say that week when the water temperatures are on the rise in the wintertime. So not necessarily a specific part of the month, but you give me some wintertime temps where they're rising.
The reason why I say late March is for the past like 3 years, late March has been very consistent for me on the Potomac River. And when I say late, I mean literally the last week of March. So it's incredible. They come out of nowhere, and then it starts heading into spring. But late March.
Yes, and they're hungry.
Yeah, and they're big.
A boat question. And I don't know if this is your all's realm or not, especially Susquehanna. Pods or no pods on a non-inboard?
Pods or no pods?
Safety wise.
You said pods or no pods for your boat.
Yeah.
It all depends on the attitude of your boat. So if you have an 18-foot boat and you're with a 9065 on it, and it's relatively gets on plane pretty quickly, there'd be no reason to add pods to it. None. Right? It's not going to really. The reason for adding pods is to expand your planing surface and to get you up and running faster. Right? That's the main reason for the pods. You can get a step pod for your dog because you duck hunt, but that's a different reason than what you're talking about.
You
So
saw Joe Raymond's recovery on the Susquehanna with the one boat with the pods.
yes, but again, it's like anything else. There could be a devil behind every situation, right? So if it's put on correctly and it's secure and the pods are not leaking water or weren't built to cause the boat to cavitate, I mean, the pods can be a good thing. Usually pods. So what ends up happening is we get a boat and we buy an engine that's at the top of our price range, outboard wise. And then we go, this boat's pretty slow. It takes forever to get on plane. I'm going to fix this with horsepower, which could work. And then you put that 200 horsepower engine on it that weighs 150 pounds more. And now you're I can't use the word, so tail heavy on the boat that it can't get on plane. Pods will not, right? But you can't just go to Pods R Us and get them put on. I mean, you got to go someplace that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be a Band-Aid over another disaster. So there are guys who can do it, and there are guys who can't.
Thomas?
So I have a question here from myself. How is the kayak tournaments really pressuring the Susquehanna now that you have the Bassmasters, the Hobie, BOS? They're coming like every single year. And for the first time, you have a smallmouth river that's under the same tournament pressures like the tidal Potomac.
It's just Susquehanna or someplace else?
We could do all three rivers depending on the pressure. But yeah, the Susquehanna is the one that I've noticed that has more pressure on it than anything.
Pressure changes everything. Right? I mean, the more boats on the water, the more stuff on the water. Generally, kayak fishing is not. I mean, the problem with kayak fishing is that it gives people quicker access to some areas, right? So if you have an area that's close to the boat ramp and they're having a tournament, it could be pressure and it takes forever to get in the water with your boat because there's more people, which would be the same thing of any tournament. I think certain areas of the river that are more community-based, the kayak fishing has definitely impacted, a little bit more pressure. I think the COVID making everybody work from home and allowing people to have an activity outdoors, which is an approved activity by the governor of our state at least, has added pressure. But again, these are all opportunities to go look for another place and get better at what you're doing.
Question. You guys spoke about a lot of baits, but you never brought up one thing about rattle traps. What's your guys' take on rattle traps?
Change the hooks out as soon as you buy a rattle trap. A lot of people don't fish rattle traps because that's a bait where the fish becomes unbuttoned quickly. So a few fixes is I like to change my rattle traps out, and I don't know if they make them anymore. I bought a lifetime supply of these things called trapper hooks. They're really weird looking, but they really make a difference on, if you're at 50%, you're going to go up to 75 or 80%. The other thing, and these guys can add to it, I think you need a softer rod You really need a slow tip rod for rattle traps. They work great. And when you get the cadence down that the fish want, you're going to catch a bunch of fish. But until you find that cadence, it can be really tough. And again, this comes into a turbidity thing. If you get dirty water on a rise, that rattle trap's going to make a lot of noise. You're going to catch a lot of fish. But you got to throw it into cover. And so you've got to be willing to lose a few baits to do it. So I think that the rattle trap doesn't get as much love as it probably should. But there was a time in my life where a black and blue or silver and blue rattle trap was just an absolute must-have on certain days. I think I fell more in love with the square bill crankbait and its control than a rattle trap over the years. But you're right; it's probably not used enough on my boat.
You got anything to add to the rattle traps?
Yeah, the rattle trap again. Those hard baits, it's situational. There's only one time that I ever use them with customers on my boat, and that's when the water, the clarity of the water is bad, the turbidity. Other than that, I don't really throw them very much. Springtime, you can get away with them even if the water just has good color to it. But it really doesn't even matter. I guess the brand, I like Lucky Craft, and I like the KBD ones, the Strike King ones. Just to add to what Chris just said. I mean, that's about the only times I use one.
So we got another question here. It's from Larry. Which river is going to give up a 23-pound sack first, the Shenandoah or the Upper Potomac?
Which river is going to give up a 23-pound sack of fish?
One's a tributary to the other. So.
Yeah, Jeff said it right though. I mean, the Shenandoah is a tributary to the Potomac, but
Same fish.
I mean, I could definitely see Shenandoah. View on
especially where the Shenandoah meets the Potomac, but there's a lot of big fish in the Upper Potomac River, a lot of big ones. So I would have to say the Potomac.
Ooh, fight.
Jumping back to where we talked winter, talk summer. Summertime, warm temps, everybody's out going, doing top water. What would, again, I want to get with your top three if you want to throw a top water when they're on their feet and you got good river conditions. You going soft plastic? Are you going, whopper, plopper? What have you found in these recent years for a top water? There's so much stuff out there now, hard bait compared to soft plastic. What have you found that's just been doing it?
Me personally on the Shenandoah and the Potomac, whopper plopper, of course.
I introduced a friend who had never used them. His tackle box has 200 whopper. Every other lure he stopped. He just throws a whopper plopper, whatever. And I was like, I didn't mean him to go that far. He's like, there's no other lure on earth to him. And it was like, oh my God, you create a monster.
Yeah.
It works, but
Yes.
he was like,
Yeah.
he drank the Kool-Aid.
Yes. Lots of folks have. But I mean, also, Zero Spook, Tiny Torpedo. I mean, man, both of those have really good.
Soft plastic wise,
soft plastic wise, I don't throw a whole lot of soft plastic, top water baits. I mean, I have before in the past, but I'm not throwing into weeds and stuff like that. So generally the treble hooks, aren't an issue out where I'm at.
Just touching base on the whopper plopper. What makes that bait so good is that you don't have to have the rod control that you do on a walk the dog type bait. It's very similar to a buzz bait, but you don't have to have the reel speed to keep the buzz bait in the plane, and you can keep it in the plane longer. So I think that's why the love affair with this crazy bait is, right? I mean, I'm telling you that this year during that big white fly hatch, they make it. What's the small one? Is it a 60?
660
is the smallest one. I had to change the hooks on the back of it. Yeah, whatever the smallest one is. I had to change the hooks on the back of it. But oh my gosh, that thing was just stupid good, right? And big fish on that stupid little bait. I like to throw a fluke or whoever makes whatever one you want to throw.
Everybody's got a soft jerk bait or whatever.
And believe me, I mean, you can fish that on the top water. I nose hook it, and I just tell people rip it, bang, 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 and then stop it. So now it becomes a top water that goes to subsurface, right, just under the surface of the water. but that's a very underutilized bait. If I'm fishing for largemouth in a lake, I use an offset hook, and I Texas rig it. If I'm fishing for smallmouth, I nose rig it. Now, on like a number 1 or number 2 hook.
Short shank.
Short shank.
Just like you do almost for a drop shot.
Drop shot hook, finesse hook. Exactly. Right.
So you're throwing it with a drop shot style hook.
Yeah, Gamakatsu, short shank.
Really?
Yeah, and that's, to me, I can walk that bait. And this year, even in the summer when I was catching smaller fish, I could use a 5, a 6, or 7 inch bait, and it was working really well. I mean, that's just, it's crazy good. And on a big river, down in the main river, you throw that out sometimes in like a foot of water. What else are you gonna throw other than a topwater bait in that water?
That's what I'm getting with the lower water levels.
And you'll move it, and you'll see 2 sets of these coming at the bait, and you just hoping that one of them get to it before you lose your mind. So it can be very, very exciting. And I'll tell you what I used to do with it is I would take, because it was so hard to work the Zara spook for some people, is I would take the Zara spook and I would twist the hook, so I had the weight of the hooks on there, but I twist them all up so they wouldn't catch the fish. And I would tease up almost like I would if I was tuna fishing, tease up or bill fishing, tease up the bass, and then have them throw the soft fluke behind me and act as if they've just dispersed a thing. And I've gotten more people on my boat into fishing the soft plastic after I tease them up. And then once I start it and they get confidence, that they start throwing it right. But that's a great little topwater. Now, I think Z-Man makes a little popper that's phenomenal. And that thing can be absolutely incredible. But talk to your bait shop and get the right hooks, because the wrong hook's just going to frustrate you. Because you get the wrong hook on it, the bass hits it, you get it, and it comes flying out of their mouth. It just frustrates you. But if you get the right hook, oh my gosh, that's a lot of fun.
Thomas?
Right there. Perfect. All right. We have another question here from Low Chops 301 for Jeff Green. Who would you recommend someone take their boat to if it had damage?
So if they're talking about a hole in your aluminum boat and you live over by me, Mount Airy, Maryland, or Frederick, Maryland, or somewhere in between there, I would take it to a place called McGowan's Welding. He'll do it right at his house. He's a fabricator, and that's what he does for a living. He's just not doing it on the side. So to answer your question, you take it to a place called McGowan's Welding. If anyone has a hole in their boat right now, anyone? And also to add to that topwater, if you guys see a black whopper plopper in a tree below White's Ferry, it's mine. I'm waiting for the water to come up high enough so I can be the only idiot out there that goes and gets it. The water's got to come up around 10 feet for me to get it, but I think I can reach it with my 12-foot pole that has a little
decorating for Christmas.
Yeah, someone threw it in there, and I watched him throw it overhead with a tree right in front of him. I was like, oh my gosh, and I couldn't get it out. So if you see it, just leave it for me. I'll get it sometime this in the new year.
Right here.
Question is for Travis. Noticed some signs of walleye that you've been putting up recently. Is there anything different that you're doing to specifically target them, or are you just saying like you're out smallmouth fishing and you just happen to run into some walleye?
Yeah, so the question's walleye on the Shenandoah, and I've been pulling in some monster walleyes. Honestly, man, I'm fishing for smallmouth. Yeah, I'm targeting smallmouth, but the walleye just, seem to want to eat. And I mean, the majority of those fish, excuse me, coming in on jerk baits. They like those jerk baits, man. Like to see them move. So, and there's getting to be more and more of them. And I did an episode with Thomas of Fishing the DMV. Yeah, there's a monster right there.
Jeff Kelby in the background.
That's exactly who's in the background. And that one was 29, like 29 and a half, 10 and a half pounds. So monster walleye. But they like those jerk baits, and you like I said, I'm just out there, smallmouth fishing. So they just happen to have, but Thomas had asked me at the last time I did an episode with him for fishing the DMV about if I thought that I could maybe start doing dedicated walleye trips. And it's the more and more, ever since he said that, I've been like, yeah, it's starting to seem like that.
Well, probably like the ones in Lake Erie that you do just pull them in.
Yeah, you got to work a little bit harder for the ones out here on the river, I think.
So Travis, do you notice, because we get them, we notice that they're on the current seams. So if we're fishing for bass and we find 20, 25, 26 inch, there's usually more than one of them in that same area. And you can almost go back to that same area day after day. And once this time of year gets into it. So
yeah, and
they
definitely
know school, they're homey.
Yeah, they are very schooly, definitely. There was a day on the Shenandoah where we pulled out cookie cutter shape, like maybe 8 to 12 inch walleye, and we probably put 15 of them in the boat just in this one deep hole that we were in. So, but yeah.
Great question, Thomas.
Right now, we're all caught up.
All right, good. What else here? Right here.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of you mention a Senko, which is my favorite bait on the Shenandoah. I fish it like
Senkos?
on the top water.
Can't go wrong with them, man.
Rig. I mean,
Yeah.
I assume you all use them as well.
Yeah, Senko's great
Any
bait.
situations or anything that you like to go to?
Situations for the Senko, I fish a Senko just like I fish a Ned rig. So, on the bottom, just bounce it. You just got to buy more packs of Senkos than you do the Z-Man stuff. So.
Yeah. One of my favorite baits to use is a 3-inch Senko. I know some people probably think they don't like using them for some reason, but a 3-inch Senko and a 4-inch, it depends on, how you're fishing or when you're fishing.
The skinnier one or they're still the same size?
Just the same ones like that, those Yamamoto ones, but yeah, and the two colors I like the most are green pumpkin and black. And they should be outlawed. They're so deadly on the river, but yeah, I use them with a slider head. You guys ever heard of a Charlie Brewer slider head? A 16th ounce weight on them. And they just seem to crush them in the summertime. I've even hooked on guided trips. We've hooked big muskie. We never get them in. Of course, they take my little bait, but they'll grab one of those little Senkos. Those Senko, they just can't handle it. They see them and they just want to eat them.
How much is food where they're going to be in the winter, or is it just where they're going to be that's warm water, or is the food in the warm water?
The food is in the warm water.
What is it that they're eating in the winter?
Lots of crayfish. And even some bait fish. The water's not too cold. It's, killed a bunch of them off. I was out on the Shenandoah the other day in an area that I was just doing, put in at one boat ramp, and I was taking out at the same boat ramp. I have a 14-foot whitewater raft that I rowed. Wasn't rowing back upstream, but I do have a small outboard that I put on it. And heading back upstream, I broke a shear pin, which is, that's what happens in low water, So broke the shear pin, pulled over, walked back to my truck, and walking past an island, and over the island, and the water behind the island was full of bait fish. And it's just pretty interesting to see. Literally thousands of these small bait fish back there. So
So 50s and 60s, early 70s, there was a gentleman called Dan Gapin. He fished pretty much the upper Mississippi River. And Dan was on it. This is pre-internet. His take on it was that a lot of these minnows are cold water fish. So they're active, very active when it's really cold. Anybody ever throw ice in a bait bucket to keep their stuff alive, right? You're taking water temperature summertime and dropping it down to the 40-degree range. And those minnows are hopped up when you take them out of there, right? They're not sleepy. They're not anything. So I can't speak for all the rivers, but you've got dace, you've got darters, you've got all kinds of the emerald shiners that are just flourishing this time of year. And they're not going to be in the pods that you'll see, you know, in the riffles like you'll see them in the summertime, but they're going to be in schools. If you've got electronics, you'll see them on your schools. And a lot of them will just be right on the bottom, right? And they're not moving a lot, but they're active. So that's why when you're working your Ned rig or your whatever your tube, and you pop that tube off the bottom, it isn't likely a crayfish that they're looking for, even though it's scented like a crayfish. It could be a darter that's sitting on top of a rock. It sees a fin move like this. They're whacking.
Why they move less in the winter, or because the minnows are moving less in the winter, probably too. Right?
Yep, absolutely. But they're there. I mean, it's like a crayfish is really hard. I mean, sometimes you ever catch fish, they have a lot of leaves on their mouth. Those are peas that are rooting around in that stuff for hellgrammites and crayfish, because crayfish really don't go dormant. They don't hibernate, but they go more to a dormant stage. But I mean, I've caught crayfish in 36, 37 degree water, and they're moving really slow. I mean, they're not darting away on them. But if they can root through the rocks or through the gravel or through the grass, you ever bring a big mass of stuff into your boat and you've got freshwater shrimp and you've got crayfish stuck all in that stuff, and that's what they're doing sometimes.
Thomas?
Again, right now we've had over 50 unique people watching the channel right now, and I think we have in total we've had over like 130 when you count in here and then also watching. So great turnout, everyone. Please smash that like button. We're almost to 40 likes, and then we have a new question. I gotta find the damn thing again. There it is. Brandon Solis, color, sound, or smell, which is more important?
Oh man, I mean, yeah.
Smell helps them hold on.
Smell does help them hold on. I mean, all three of them can be relatively important at different times of the year, different water levels. Water's dirty, I'm going to throw a black, something dark, it's a tube or something along those lines. They all really kind of
I think it's
play in hand.
It's a great question, but it really becomes situational. I mean, if you're in the Susquehanna and it's summertime and there's not a lot of boat traffic, I'm not so sure that you want a really heavy rattling bait going through the water at that point in time. You want to be more stealthy. I don't think that you need any kind of flavor or attractant at that point in time, because they're going to hit it. They're going to hit it hard. So the color, we talked about, I tend to go muted colors or translucent colors the clearer the water is. I mean, and then the darker the water is, I don't care what color it is as long as I can't see through it. If I hold it up to a fluorescent light and I can't see through that bait, I don't care if it's pearl white, I'm throwing it, because it's darker than what comes down. I mean, I prefer to throw black because it's just, in my head, it works out better, but that's the thing. I think that the colder the water, the advantage of a scent is that it keeps that fish on the bait longer or creates a second strike. That's what smallmouth are infamous about, their second strike ability, right? So if you feel a strike, if you can avoid if you lose that fish, drop that rod tip back down, let that bait fall, you'll tend to get that strike again any time of year. But if you have scent on it, you're definitely going to get a strike again. I just don't know that smell, other than, I don't think smell draws bass in. I think it's that if they're close, really close, it makes a difference. But I don't think the smell's a big factor most of the year.
Your tackle box fell in the water. You're right next to Jake's. You got $15. What are you going to throw that day? What are you going to grab a handful of and throw?
What time of the year?
Let's say spread. Each different time. But pick a time.
I'm a big fan of the Ned rig. Ned rig, all year long.
A tube, 2 3/4 inch tube, probably green pumpkin with a 1/8 ounce jig head. And you can throw that 365 days a year.
Just honestly, throw what you're confident with. I mean, if someone's on the boat doing 2 to 3 to 1 to you on something, then you throw what they're throwing, right? But if you have confidence, I have guys that will look at a hula stick and go, I am not throwing that thing. right? They'll throw it 2 or 3 times, don't have confidence in it. They're never going to catch a fish on it, right? So they want to throw a smoke purple tube because the last time on the boat we caught 100 fish on a smoke purple tube. I put a smoke purple tube on it. They're going to catch fish, and then I'll show them through their partner, hey, he's catching them on a peanut butter and jelly, hula stick. And then they'll start to go. But if you don't have confidence in something, like the gentleman asked me about throwing the rattle traps or throwing the spinnerbaits and the chatterbaits, you just throw them. Yeah. Throw them. I mean, and realize you just throw them in different situations. You're once that light bulb moment happens for you, you'll be fine. But confidence, I think it was Jeff Little, confidence is key. If you have confidence in something, it's almost guaranteed it's going to work.
Yes, Todd.
Yeah, I was just curious about on the Potomac, so it's late winter, early spring, like Dam 4 up to 81 versus Brunswick, Pointed Rocks. You got any preference? That time of
Yeah,
year?
you can answer that too, right? Yeah, go ahead real quick. I'll answer it.
Yeah, real quick. Repeat that question again.
Just the fishing, like say Dam 4 up to the 81 bridge
Mhm.
versus Brunswick,
In-
around that area during late winter, early spring.
Yes, fishing in Upper Potomac, late winter, early spring. As far as the Upper Potomac's concerned, I mean, I generally fish that Harpers Ferry area, and it offers a lot. And there's different parts of it at different times of the year that are going to be better, especially like March and, late winter into early spring. There's other parts of it that it's just not going to hold any fish. And, over time, you just learn where those fish are going to be at that time of the year. But, you're in that transition period where they're going to start, spawns right around the corner if it hasn't already started. Well,
Yeah. So you said the area above 81?
No, from like, I guess Dam 4 up to 81.
Yeah, that area. I normally don't fish up there, but you said something about Brunswick?
Yeah, around Brunswick and Pointed Rocks.
Yeah, those areas I fished. I know the river really well from, you guys know where Riley's Lock is, Seneca? You ever been there? All the way up to Dam 4. And that's got to be like 40 miles of river, right? And so, that Harpers Ferry area, obviously I don't go in because it needs a raft. So I don't go through there, but skip that and then go up into the areas where you can boat. Shepherdstown, right across the river is Sharpsburg, and then on up further. You can't go wrong with Knoxville Falls. You know where that area is? Just north of Brunswick. The Point of Rocks area can be good. North of Point of Rocks, that time of year. I find a lot of success around Brunswick. Using you said March?
Yeah, I mean, late winter, early spring.
Yeah, I find a lot of success with jerk baits.
Jeff, you have one question? Right.
During the summer, the Bass Meadow magazine, it was an interesting article in regards towards the northern smallmouth versus the southern smallmouth. And I've noticed that at least on the Shenandoah, just how big their mouths can be. Are the genetics any different on the Susquehanna? I've never fished up there before in terms of like smallmouth. Is there any difference with the smallmouth up there at all?
So my experience with the genetics, I really don't have a scientific reason for it, because if you go back in time, all of these fish that were on the Susquehanna and the Delaware were literally from, the Ohio basin, right? That's where they came from. A gentleman by the name of Thaddeus Norton brought these fish in those old-fashioned, 20-gallon milk containers in a refrigerated freight rail car, and he took them to eastern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, and they stocked it. And within 10 years, it was 10 bass an hour, on a fly rod. So the commission got very excited about it, and they said, we want you to stock these fish out of the Delaware and into the Susquehanna. And so 10 years later, they did the same thing, and they flourished. If you go today and catch those fish, they look like they're completely impossible to be the same fish. On the Delaware, whether it's forage or flow, they have huge heads, very large tails, and they are long and skinny. On the Susquehanna, probably due to age, they are the same size smallmouth, has a much smaller head and a much smaller tail and a much wider body. So that could be forage, but I don't understand why the head is different unless these fish are literally multiple years older in the same size range. So it's exactly the same strain of smallmouth, but they look completely different. And we're not even talking about enough time to affect species. Right? I mean, species takes thousands of years to change, right? So if we're talking, I mean, Thaddeus did this in the 1800s, right? And then he did the Susquehanna 10 years later. So we're talking less than 150 years. They couldn't have possibly changed. So flow and forage plays a bigger role, I think, than south versus north. So in the south, they're going to grow faster. They have a longer feeding session, probably have more forage, and they probably have a longer growth section. So they grow faster generally in the south. And that's got to be it. On the Susquehanna, ask anybody that's ever flipped over a rock. There's a crayfish under every rock. You go to the Delaware, you could flip rock for 4 days before you find a crayfish. So their forage is generally, minnows, faster moving stuff. The Delaware is a smaller flow if you look on the chart. When you see how small the Delaware is compared to the Susquehanna, the flow is actually higher. It's a much faster moving river. It falls, if you look at the depth chart from where it is, the bottom of the river, where it is from a geological standpoint, down to where it goes, it drops like 18 to 20 something feet. Where the Susquehanna being a lot older river, it may drop 5 feet in 400 miles. It's just a very different river.
We have another 5 to 10 minutes. Any other questions?
Back to the cold water fishing and jerkbait. That's below 40 degree water. Is your boat moving? Your jerkbait fishing.
When I'm jerkbait fishing, I have an anchor out, or my boat's on anchor with my trolling motor. And if the wind's blowing at all, I have one talon down. I want that boat to be as still as possible. Now I'll fish, if I'm fishing the middle of the river and I'm fishing, I will jockey the boat left or right or back. But when we're doing that, I usually don't have the baits in the water. When I'm fishing in this time of year, I'm generally pretty solidly slow when that water is below 40. I want my clients to feel everything they're feeling that's in their control. I don't want any outside control with the boat moving at all. Just me personally.
Yeah, as far as my boat's concerned, being a raft, I actually have 2 anchors on my boat, and I drop a front one and a back one. I'll drop both of them just to try and steady the boat so that there's no sway to it. Because a lot of times I'm out maybe in a little bit more current than what I'm fishing, and so yeah, just keep it steady.
So when you're using a suspended jerkbait, that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah, your boat position is everything. Like how you have your boat sitting in the water, and with the technology we have today with those spot lock trolling motors in a boat, you can, like Chris said, you can move your boat left, right, up or down 5 feet, whenever you want to. But yeah, you're gonna want to sit still. I mean, I've caught them just drifting real slow. I mean, obviously, yeah, you can catch them that way. You can catch them that way in the wintertime, because I just have recently drifting in the middle of the river and catching them with a tube, like you're summer fishing, but just never moving the line much. But so when you throw it out, you're just going to pop it ever so slightly, and you're going to let the current take that jerkbait and just sweep it all the way back behind the boat. Maybe pop it a little bit as it's getting ready to go behind the boat. I mean, there's people that'll fish with a suspending jerkbait in the wintertime. You can throw it out, put it in a rod holder, and just let it suspend in the water, and smallmouth will hit it too.
That's what we call Rodney catching a fish.
So just to be clear, because we talked about 40 degrees and under. If it's 40 degrees and under, you're really not searching the river for the fish. You're searching the whole for the fish. So whether you're fishing above a ledge, in between two ledges, you're just looking, you know that the fish are there. And so what I tell people is I like to look at the bubble lines a little bit to see kind of where it is to help us out. But if the boat's sitting exactly like this one, so the river's going to be going this direction, we're going to throw wide on a slack line and work the bait on a slack line for a while. And if we start hitting fish on a slack line, we're going to throw the exact same spot. If they're hitting it during the swing or at the bottom of the swing, I'm going to cut that level out and say, okay, guys, we're going to cut more like 30 degrees towards the and literally have the bait hang behind the boat. So, when you're searching, it's just easier to search from when the boat's in lock position in the wintertime. Because if you find the fish in one area, they're going to be in that area. I mean, you're going to plop 4 or 5 fish off that area, maybe more. So if once you find the fish, you don't want your boat to move 1 iota. So you say, I'm throwing towards that white barn. You want to continue to throw towards that white barn until those fish stop biting there. And then you want to find the next one. So, in a river system, you can't always throw on a slack line, and that's a very different fishing than throwing on the current, So when we're talking about putting it in the rod holder, we're not fishing slack line baits. We're fishing, downriver into the current scene away from the slack line. So if that makes sense, if it doesn't, feel free to stop by and I'll explain that. That's important.
Thomas has one, and then sir with the white hat will finish with you. You'll be the last one.
Yeah, and again, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to get your questions in, you better hurry up. We only have about 10 minutes left that we're going to be continuing the seminar. The next question that we have is Ned rig or tube? Ned rig or tube? If you had to pick one.
Whew. Both. That's what I'm going with. Both. That's my answer.
Well, you could always fish a tube on a Ned rig.
Right.
There is a TRT too.
But they're both just. They catch fish. Both of them will. I can't say which one I would. To be honest with you.
The tube may have a little bit of an advantage when it's really, really cold out. And they both catch fish like crazy, right? And when I say Ned rig, I'm talking more about the hook than I am the bait, because I throw a stone caddy on a Ned rig. I throw, I throw a Chili Willy on a Ned rig. I throw Z-Man products out the wazoo on a Ned rig. So I think you have more versatility than you do with a tube. But I'm not giving up my tubes.
I think with the history of the tube, I would just to answer the question, I'd say a tube. But does a Ned rig catch fish? Yeah, catches a lot of fish. But big fish. But the tube is just tried and true. It's always since it's been invented, it's caught smallmouth bass, and it keeps fooling them every year. It's been around a long time, and those fish are just too dumb to realize that that's not something to eat. So it fools them every time.
I predominantly fish Front Royal to Harper's Ferry. The question's for any of you gentlemen, but certainly Travis, I know that's your water. I want to start targeting musky. Hell, I've fished that stretch of water for 25 years now. I'm sure I lost a lot, had my line snapped and not known it. Caught one. And I want to start adding that to my. What advice do you give a guy other than maybe drink water?
10,000
Yeah, well, and you're talking about musky fishing. The question is musky fishing on the Shenandoah, mostly main stem, but also some South Fork. Man, as far as where to concentrate on those guys, deep water, you start looking at stuff and on the Shenandoah, you start looking at it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a musky hole. Deep water with log jams, log falls, man. Those fish will hang out right there, and definitely, wear some polarized sunglasses so you can see past the glare of the water. And sometimes you'll see them follow your bait in, just not quite really, willing to commit on it, which, of course, is when you end up going into that, figure eight style. Definitely. Winter's great time for it, man.
Late November all the way through March.
Yeah.
Recommendation of maybe basic gear. Like I said, I've never really targeted musky.
6 or 7 inch glide bait.
Say again?
6 or 7 inch glide bait.
6 or 7 inch glide bait is what he said.
Big old rod though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
if you're gonna
big
throw it.
rod, heavy line. I mean, it's, you're gonna, and
30 pound and braided or 30 pound.
yeah, like 30 pounds, 20 pounds, something like that. I mean, but also, you want to, you can't give up. I mean, that's the thing. If you want to target muskie, target muskie. Some buddies of mine, they're true muskie hunters, and they'll catch on a big Meps bucktail musky bait. They'll catch a 20-inch smallie, and they call it an incidental. They're not really worried about it. They want to catch that muskie, and you just gotta stay on it. What was that?
I would avoid trying to finesse them on bass tackle.
Yeah.
If they're going to give you everything they got, and your best thing as a conservative, smart fisherman is to have the right size tackle for what you're throwing, and your hookup ratio won't be any better. Your landing ratio will be much better, and that fish will live a lot longer than if you can finesse muskie. You can certainly do it. It wears the snot out of them. So, I mean, it really is. It's going to be easier to throw that bigger stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, you get on these musky forums, but glide bait, you can still catch smallmouth on it, so your day won't be completely boring. But I mean, you hook them on a glide bait, you got them pretty good.
Thomas has one last question, then we're going to do the raffle. And these guys will probably stick around for a little bit afterwards. If you have any other personal questions, you get a chance to talk to them. What you got, Tom?
Oh yeah, we got a couple more questions here to wrap this thing up, and then again, we're going to be giving away the fishing guide trip, and then also doing the raffle for all the people that asked super chat questions. We have Chuck Arkale, best spots for kayak fishing trips on the Shenandoah River.
Yeah, best spots for kayak fishing on the the best thing to do is to consult Google Maps. All right, most of the boat ramps are on Google Maps, and don't do something crazy. And Thomas can confirm this. Don't do something crazy and float from Route 50 down to Route 7, because it's going to be all day trip. So. But start out with something short, and a shorter stretch. You can run that for a while and really get it a good workover, and you're not having to stay on the time game.
So 2 things real quick. Before we wrap it up here, I want to thank these guys again for coming on. Take time out of their busy schedules, and they're guiding all the time to come out and just share their knowledge. We just really appreciate it. They're very approachable too, so don't hesitate to come up here in a minute and talk to them. I would encourage you to book a trip with them. I know some guys. Rick just went out with Chris here last week and had some good picks. And follow them online. I mean, I'm seeing the rivers are back. The smallmouth are healthy. And one thing we learned when we opened this store, fishing never ends. It's 12 months out of the year, and some of your biggest fish are going to be caught in the next 2 or 3 months of all year potentially. So get out there. If you're not sure, get with these guys. Book a trip with them. We really appreciate it. Get your red ticket out for your 50-50. Came out to $66.50. And we'll have some door prizes. As Thomas said, he's got another one here. Put my balls on. Hitting old. 2, 4, 3, 3, 3, 6. 2, 4, 3, 3, 3, 6. Who's got it? Right here. 3, 6.
Wow.
Winner chicken dinner. All right. Thomas, you want to do yours now, or do we go door prizes?
All righty, so let's do the big shindig giveaway.
Guided trip with Travis.
We have the gift card. We have the guide trip with Travis. So we're going to start in 3rd place. We have Ernest Rojas. In second place, we have Big B TV. And then both of you guys will be getting a $10 gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. Now, again, if you're watching live or if you're not here right now, I'm going to post this on all my social media so that way you can come claim it. And then the grand prize winner is Travis Sabir.
Travis! He's dying. That's all he wanted. Merry Christmas, Travis. That's all I've been talking about. Good for him. That's awesome. That's right. That's good. All right, I got about 18 things over here. I'll read the name, come up, choice over here on the table. Feel free to shop. Feel free to talk to these guys. Again, am I forgetting anything, Thomas?
No, you're doing good. Keep it up.
Yep, and follow again. Oh, one more thing too. Again, I help Thomas. Unfortunately, I'll sit down with Thomas sometimes and interview these guys, and I just learned so much by just listening, talking to them, interviewing them. And then I go back and I watch the podcast. I'll go back and watch what I was already part of, and I learn things that I didn't, see the first time through. It amazes me. And so I would just encourage you to go back on. This has all been taped. You can go back on and watch it again. There's so much information out there. So let's go ahead and go with thank you again, guys. Mike Cummins, come on up and get a door prize here. Your choice. Jeff Dingus.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
I need more fishing stuff.
I need more rods.
David Van Doren. David Schrader. Is it Jairus Asit? All right. No problem. Patrick Schrader, come on up and grab. We got about 18 things. Jesse Barstow.
I don't have one of those.
Zach Carlisle. Bo McQuaid. All right, Bo. Remember, he's selling raffle tickets as well. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. New bass boat. Don DeLauder.
So I really hope that you guys liked all that, fantastic seminar that we just put on. A little housewarming stuff for our side of things. We have 2 winners from our super chat giveaway, which basically only matters for the people that aren't here. So if your names are, if I could bring this any closer to the screen, there we go. We got Whoopin' Bass and we got Sam Egerton. Whoopin' Bass, Sam Egerton. You guys have just won a house door. Well, come on over here. You say it. They have weird ass names.
It's a whoop bass.
Oh,
like whoop ass, but it's whoop bass.
Should have been whooping.
The second one is Sam Edgin or Edgin. I'm not sure how to
guy
pronounce
whose name
it,
was
but it's
Joe
not
Biden's bicycle?
Edinger or whatever. Whatever you were saying.
So Whoop Bass and Sam Eden, you guys have won a door prize. If you are here in location, just meet up with me. If not, please message me on Instagram or Facebook to claim your prize, and I can mail it to you. Okay? Thank you guys so much, and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. Let's play this out. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
It doesn't take a lot. I mean, because that's one thing I noticed about some of the podcasts. They're just kind of like, even up here, those guys' faces are real dark and stuff.